Good afternoon, everybody, or morning still. Like to always take a sample of my audience. How many in here are developers? All right. Academics? All right. What about executives or business people in general? Good split, okay. So I'll wait for my slides for a second, but I run a company called PolySwarm. We are looking at doing better threat detection, or antivirus in the first case, with economics, leveraging the power there. So next slide, please. Is there a clicker up here? Yeah. So antivirus has been the same forever since its inception for the past 20 years. And it works like this. You give your subscription dollars to a single vendor, you know the big names, and they provide you an antivirus engine and some software updates for the year. And that's great, except if that vendor misses a threat and another vendor that you're not a subscriber of picks up on the threat, you as the user are not protected. So we end up in this situation where it's one vendor and you miss out on all the coverage that other vendors could provide. And so what this results in, against new threats, the average engine is between 53 and 74% effective. Now, what I mean here by new threats is things that are sort of in that 0-day to 2-week cycle, where not all the engines have seen the threats and sort of adapted to them. So what that means is that, quite frankly, these companies spend about 21 to 30% of gross revenue on R&D, right? And the average dev salary in these companies is anywhere between 43K and 94K. So you can already see we've got some variables to play with on the economic side. What if we increased R&D spending or used more developing or emerging market developers, right, to sort of maintain and enhance these engines? Would they get better? So the question we came up with is, could we do better with new virus detection, with new threat detection, if we rethought the economics behind AV? If instead of a subscription to a single vendor, we put that subscription dollar into a network that was responsible for redistributing those incentives. So that's why we're building PolySwarm. And very simply, PolySwarm is a threat detection marketplace where security experts from all over the world can come weigh in on threats and tell you whether or not the file or artifact your business has seen is malicious. So we do that a couple ways. One, we like to incentivize competitive coverage, right? So instead of just giving $1 to a single vendor, the dollar goes into the network and is redistributed to security expertise based on how good they are at finding new threats. So we're using an economic concept to actualize this called a prediction market. Has anybody in here heard of a prediction market? Okay, we got 1, 2. Okay, cool. So I'll go through it real quick. So say you and I, we wanted to know who's going to win the US election, the next US election. And so we put that question out there to experts and we say, hey, experts, you know, is it going to be Trump or Hillary, right? Please weigh in with your considered expertise. And instead of weighing in with a single vote, they weigh in with their money, their dollars, right? So maybe at the end of the prediction contract, you've got $1,000 saying Hillary's gonna win and $100 saying Trump. Put another way, all the expertise putting their money on the line thinks 10 to 1 that Hillary's gonna win over Trump. So it turns out they were wrong in this last election cycle, and for that, the people who weighed in on Trump would have taken the money from the Hillary supporters. So we're using the same thing in threat detection and malware prediction, right? We're asking experts to say, hey, this file or this URL or this web page, if it's malicious, put your cryptocurrency on it, right? And if you're right, you'll get paid from the side that's wrong. So this leads us to our second step. It helps diversify malintent predictions. Put another way, we get several different opinions on whether an artifact is malicious or not, instead of an opinion from one vendor or maybe 2 vendors, right? So this is good because there's 1 billion unique daily malware scans. But what this means for security experts is they have to build software to deal with the volume of these scans. So we expect the experts on our network not to analyze every single artifact or potential threat that comes across. Instead, we expect them to build software that does the same, much like high-speed traders build stock trading software, or other people build automation software for control systems, right? So the idea is that this software pulls down a file, analyzes the file, and makes a prediction on whether or not this thing is malicious. Now, the interesting thing here is the prediction for the first time is recorded into the blockchain. So for the first time over the life of an anti-malware engine, you can see its performance, its historical performance. I really wish we had this feature for news commentators, right? So when they're saying something on TV, you could say, okay, this guy's right about 50% of the time, so we're just gonna not listen to him. So if you're a developer, how do you deal with this, right? Well, we expect you to attach to this marketplace we've built and simply weigh in on artifacts that come across. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to essentially put your wagers on every single potential threat that comes across, but we're only encouraging experts to weigh in on threats that they're confident they can predict if it's malicious or not, right? And the way we're forcing this is through the economics. So, put another way, experts that are really bad at making predictions will lose all their money very quickly. So, to the developers in the room, to the security experts who we want to encourage that diverse set of participation in the network, why build this micro engine? Well, very simply, there's this huge daily volume out there of files to be scanned. And for a deep scan, for heavy analysis, that costs around a half a US cent to 1 US cent, depending on who the vendor you're using, how deep you're scanning, if you're using multiple engines, right? So put another way, for security experts, if they can automate a small slice of that market, if they can make predictions on, say, if a PDF is malicious or if a doc file is malicious, who received a PDF in their email today? Yeah, like a good 10% of the room, right? So that's replicated across all email receiving parties in the world. And what you don't realize is every time you receive an email attachment, it's virus scanned somewhere along the way. If you use Gmail, it's absolutely virus scanned. If you're part of a large enterprise, it's probably virus scanned again at the mail server to that enterprise. So we think there's this huge potential for developers in the emerging markets to actually leverage this decentralized technology and put their expertise into software form where it's used at scale every day. So we're not prescriptive about the approach they take, right? We're using the economics to solve the problem. We're not saying deep learning is going to fix all our problems or AI is going to solve world hunger here. What we're saying simply is that we believe if you build a good micro engine, if you detect threats and protect users, then economically you should do well over time. But in order to guarantee this, the system has to be fair, right? So this is actually what we spent a very long time thinking about, was the game theory behind this. How do we make a level playground for people, right? How do we provide an environment that has no spam? Well, the way we solve that is very simple. When you make an assertion as an expert, when you make a prediction, you have to pay a fee, right? So if you just make predictions based on what other experts are doing, you shouldn't be able to profit over the long term. You should come up with sort of your own work. No cheating is a better way. The way we guarantee this is we actually don't let experts see each other's predictions until the end of the prediction contract. Also, this idea that you should be informed in your staking. If you're not confident at whatever confidence threshold you set, you shouldn't be putting a bet down, right? So that's probably defined as you must be 51% confident or more in your assertion. So back to this thing of fees. A lot of people ask me, okay, well, are you as a company planning on being the middleman and collecting fees? No, we actually leave the fees alone because in a prediction market, let's say the US election example from earlier, if I ask even the average Israeli who won the US presidential election, they'll know. If I give the average, any citizen, a file, a binary, a document or whatever, and I say, hey, is this malware? They're probably not gonna know. So we use the fees in this network to incentivize somebody called the arbiters. And arbiters, after all these experts have made their predictions, 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, they weigh in and they say if that artifact is actually malicious. Now we need this because it settles who won the prediction contract, but we also need these people to be experts, so we have to incentivize them with the fees, right? The trade-off we exploit in antivirus is that if something's bad, you need to stop a user from doing that thing right now, right? But sometime later, we can actually tell you if that thing's bad or not, and who here has a quarantine folder in their email inbox and has had to go lift something out of there? It's that exact same premise, right? You have to manually go do an action to pull something out of there. So we think this aspect of staking, or putting your money where your mouth will actually encourage quality assertions and will drive the quality up on threat detection. So what that means is less false positives and better outcomes for protecting users. So we want to shrink the time to detect new threats, currently from about 2 weeks at the efficacy we talked about at the beginning of the presentation, to closer to day zero. And we think the way to do that is, again, diversify the malintent predictions, get people who are in the developing world to be able to participate in this marketplace, and they're not today. We also think those blind assertions, they encourage independence, right? They encourage people to develop their own intellectual property that'll be the best in the world at detecting threats in one little slice of the market. So I want to end here. If you're a developer and you're looking to get involved, we've got beta software out there right now, and we're looking to put, see how to build this marketplace and really tune it such that it actually protects users and performs well. Thanks for listening. Happy to answer any questions after.